Thanks, Ross.
Hello.
Hello. Speaking to the microphone. My name is Robert Brown. I am the OEM guy. As you can probably tell from our respective dress, this is the agency guy.
I couldn't convince him to dress any differently.
And I am from Nashville, Tennessee, and I actually work approximately, well, exactly right there.
And I live at the other side, way up north in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. That's where our office, Critical Mass, that's one of our offices in Critical Mass. This is where we run the Nissan USA business. And as you can see, I love going to the mountains, but ultimately I work near downtown.
The only reason that I had you put my slide there is because you had a cool slide like this, so I made him put a slide for me, for Nashville, Tennessee. Well, let's talk to you about what we're going to talk about today. I love this quote from Harvard Business Review: brands succeed when they break through in culture. And obviously that's a little easier said than done, but with that as our North Star, and with a brand promise that talks about innovation that excites, that's a big white space, right? And that infers a certain amount of risk in what we do, and a certain amount of opportunity as well. And not just in the quality of our products, but certainly it's a call to arms in terms of how we communicate, or how we might be able to communicate, especially in the digital space. So let me talk to you about something that takes a big part of my day job, and probably a big part of all of your day jobs. And that's this idea of relentless optimization, right? Day in and day out, we think about this. We think about a path to purchase. We think about eliminating roadblocks in that path to purchase. We think about how we integrate our dealer partners in that purchase process and make it as easy as possible. And for many of you in this room can attest to, it's not that easy, and there's a lot of work to do there. But I would argue, for the sake of this presentation, that those are table stakes. We need to be doing that. And this presentation isn't about that, but I want to make sure that I put the proper emphasis in terms of the importance of what needs to be solved. But this presentation, and what we're here to talk about today, is something different. And at the end of the day, awareness is key, right? You have to have something with which to begin to optimize. And so how does that awareness work? And a concept that Steve's team at Critical Mass and my own team internally at Nissan talk about is this idea of digital as wow, right? So again, efficient utility, frictionless path to purchase, super important. But this concept of digital wow has really sort of taken on a life of its own in terms of the work and what we aspire to do. And certainly those in the gaming industry can appreciate digital as wow. But traditionally, the wow part has been in high-reach traditional media like TV, using film effects to elicit emotion, right? And so we've done a lot of thinking in this area, a lot of philosophizing, a lot of late-night discussions. And we'll show you some of the results of that moving forward. So this presentation is taking a look at 3 specific executions that we've gone through that speaks to this idea of digital as wow, and goes further. This idea that human-centric, and I would argue there's nothing more human-centric than wow, certainly doesn't have to negate business needs. As a matter of fact, if it doesn't achieve what it is we're trying to achieve, and ultimately move metal, then what are we here for? We're going to introduce some thinking around tech forward versus bleeding edge, right? Because at the end of the day, we need to ensure that our investments are amortized across a significant audience in order to make this make sense for us. And then the whole idea of sweating the small stuff. I think a lot of us can talk about that regardless of what we do. And we'll point out some blood, sweat, and tears along the road to trying to achieve digital as wow. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Die Hard Fan. So Die Hard Fan, for those of you who may be familiar, Nissan has a program called College 100. And at the time of the announcement, it's the widest reaching college sports sponsorship in marketing. And it was more of an evolution. For those of you who are familiar with the work that we've done with the Heisman Trust, Nissan is very well associated with college sports. And we were looking to try to find out, as a result of this sponsorship, how the digital team could break through the clutter and really support this amazing program. And Steve's team came up with this concept of diehard fan, which this is actually the Urban Dictionary definition thereof. And, well, I think we all have a sense of what diehard fan means for us, right? And what it looks like. And, well, it looks like this, right? It's incredibly passionate fans. And there's something very tribal about that, literally, the way they paint their bodies. And, you know, the opportunity to try to attach our brand to those passion points is indeed a marketing challenge, to say the least. And that's where Steve's team comes in. I would say before we get into the specifics of the idea, that a really interesting thing that came out of this was the fact that while we have incredible experience really trying to promote our brand on campuses and at different events around the nation, the opportunity in this case was all about trying to reach an addressable audience where many of which his fans have already graduated and left their geographical area. So without spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to cover every possible permutation and media opportunity, how do you start to think about this as our addressable audience in a way that makes sense?
So as a fan, as a Canadian, you know, I'm a fan of hockey, and I did not follow college sports at all. I actually didn't know anything about it, and largely our team in Calgary didn't know a whole lot about it, and it was a huge advantage for us because once we started digging a little bit deeper, we quickly learned how big it was. That was the first thing that struck us, that was new. We had no idea how many fans were out there following C100, so that was really insightful. But what was really, really fun was we learned that people bled their colors. And when they followed the team, they were, at some moments, they were fanatical, and sometimes it's generational, that, as you guys would know. And we didn't see that type of fandom up in Canada. So that was, we were looking for ways on how we can build on what was currently happening already with the fans who followed college sports, and we were looking for ways to mobilize them. And one of the things is to mobilize them, we were onto something. We wanted to connect with their selfie culture. There was a lot of mobile cameras, or a lot of mobile out there, and there were a lot of cameras, and people were taking photos of themselves already. So we thought there was going to be an interesting connection there. Let's go on to the next point. So let's go on to the next one. We were looking for ways to mobilize these fans. We wanted to give them a tool that allowed them to show their team spirit, not just on game day, but really any day of the week. And we gave them a tool that allowed them to paint their face and show their team spirit through their mobile device. So let's take a look.
Nissan recently penned the widest reaching sponsorship deal in the history of American collegiate sports. 100 colleges and universities, their teams, and 190 million fans, each one a potential connection to the Nissan brand. Fans of college sports are authentic to the core. To reach them, we got personal with this diehard fan. Fans pick their team, scan their face, choose an authentic face paint design, and apply it virtually. Then record their best cheer and unleash it on the world. Fans know their teams, so we represented them authentically. To make sure we got it right, we got real. First, we hand-painted and captured hundreds of different designs. Each was then meticulously faced back to ensure it not only looks lifelike, but actually moves that way. Finally, advanced face tracking brought all this hand-painted art to life. There are over 1,000 different ways to personalize your game face, and it recognizes subtleties of expression, angle, and shadow, making the best way to paint the face is face paint. But who's on the seat? Pretty much everyone you're connected to. The faces and voices of diehard fans were, and are, heard all over. guy. It was how the app tapped into and unleashed the band's passion. It really pushed it to #1. Using localized media, we targeted specific states and schools, and bullseye specific rivalries and games. And by going hyper-local in stadiums, we reach fans right on their own turf. So, if you're a diehard fan, prove it.
Let's do this!
I tell you,
Effects may include chanting, shrieking, fist bumping, chest bumping, high-fiving, and horsemen. Always paint responsibly.
during the process of creating this program, everybody in our office at one point had face paint on.
There's so much going on.
We used real people.
Yeah, there's so much going on. It was fascinating from a craft perspective for those of you in that part of the industry. Starting in analog and going to digital to get the best quality was one of the interesting parts about the
we
project,
tried everything,
right?
and that's ultimately that worked the best, but it is also the most time consuming.
Exactly. So one of our themes, sweat the small stuff, right? So not only are we responsible for trying to make the human connection digital as wow, we were stewards of very large universities' brands themselves. The Ohio State University, University of Alabama, these people care very deeply about what it is they're trying to do and how they are portrayed, especially in terms of partnerships, et cetera. So we had the heavy burden of not only ensuring that everything was correct from our perspective, but from their perspectives as well. And what was really cool, and you saw a little bit of on the Jumbotron, is that based on the nature of this sort of non-traditional approach to advertising from a brand perspective, we were able to generate really hyper-relevant content. Here's an example of one of the things that we did. So you can imagine these on Jumbotrons and in stadiums all across the country. Hugely popular, so much so that universities were talking to us about inventory that they wanted this type of advertising on. So, of course, music to advertisers' ears, hearing things like that. So we cleaned up on this project both figuratively and literally. Certainly it's nice to be recognized by our peers, including a prestigious Cannes Lions Award for this. But from a business perspective, and again, making sure that we're paying our freight with these kinds of engagement opportunities, we have things like 68% unaided brand awareness. This does not happen in traditional media. So we did all of the traditional pre and post brand surveys in order to get feedback. With this, we have average total time that would be the envy of any app. And occasionally, at big game moments, we were the #1 app in the sports category, in the entire sports category, on the App Store for Apple. So we got a lot of mileage out that. We continue to do so because for the end of 2017 and 18, we took it to the next level. So what do you want to do when you have an app like that? Well, you want to find out how to eliminate friction in that part of the process to get even more reach possible.
One of the really powerful things that when we were going through this process and developing this for Facebook is as everyone knows, Facebook is very, very personal, and there's once you like something, there's that data behind that. We've learned that there was, I think, 130 million fans that liked their college school on Facebook, and because of that one like, we were able to serve up their individual face paint effects within their camera effects within Facebook. So they didn't need to choose a team. We already knew who they are. They liked their school. This was served up in the camera effects. Hugely successful. Within the first month, I think we saw as many people using it as the life of our app.
Incredibly popular, and Facebook uses it as a case study in terms of how to integrate with their product set. And the coup de grace, what better way to show cultural relevance than when you put in diehard fan in Google, we have the top search results, even without our brand name, in terms of the app. Even higher than the Urban Dictionary of diehard fan that began our process of discovery for this concept. So really proud of this work. We still think it has a ton of legs. All right, 1 down, 2 to go.
So we got about 15 minutes.
Oh, well, let's go faster then. Are you ready?
Yep.
So battle test. Battle test, a Nissan Rogue 360 VR experience. What does that mean? Well, let's talk about our challenge. What were we trying to do? For those of you familiar with the Nissan Rogue, incredibly popular vehicle in a really hugely growing segment, small SUV crossover, right? And so the issue that we had is, even though we were doing really well and are still doing well, we have relatively small awareness to our major competitors. And so our thought process is we can increase awareness on this, well, then the sky's the limit, right? How do you increase awareness? Well, you partner with some big dogs. And in this case, Lucasfilm, for Rogue One, a Star Wars story. We're trying to also drive awareness of the safety shield, an important part, purchase consideration in the segment, as well as utility. And we wanted to make that association with the Rogue, and again, improve awareness. And we had a fantastic campaign that was called Battle Test, and it was all about, hey, if you can survive the Star Wars universe with your vehicle, certainly it's probably okay for your regular commute. And we wanted to bring our spin on that concept, right? And we wanted to bring it home in terms of trying to get you inside an incredible universe that we created along with ILM and Lucasfilm. At that time, though, we hadn't decided on, VR. It was certainly hot and still is, as people try to figure out how it works. But it wasn't until Steve's team really brought this mnemonic that it started to say, of course we need to be here. Of course this is how we tell the story. Safety shield that we wanted to push. Deflector shields, right? Common in sci-fi. No-brainer as a major story point and totally relevant. And then an actual platform that allowed you to literally see 360 degrees around you. All of this said, wow, we've got the right product, the right story point, and now the right format with which to execute. What was interesting too, and we talk about, is this worth the juice? When we talk about cutting edge digital experiences, from a marketing perspective, we started to get really interesting place in terms of reach, and that was in 2017 in the spring. What we noticed though, and where we really thought we could blast off, in a sense, was this sense that there's a quality gap. This is all new stuff. And frankly, the things that we were seeing bringing to market, especially from sponsored content, was not very good. So we knew if we could crack that, if we could make something really entertaining and engaging, we could really set ourselves apart. So,
a lot of the things that we try to do, because we're in digital mostly, we try to put ourselves we try to put the customer or the person, the user, in the driver's seat. And being in digital, there's so many different ways that we've been playing around with that philosophy, that creative direction of can we actually put you in the driver's seat? And of course, in the VR environment, that became more and more a possibility. But what was super interesting, and I just want to make sure that we cover it, is we talk a lot about VR, but for Facebook and YouTube, the stars were just aligning. They just launched that you can actually view 360 content on both of their platforms. So even that was generating some excitement as well. So here we are proving 360 of safety in 360, and then you have YouTube and Facebook that just launched their 360 product within their platform. So the stars really did align there. So ultimately, when you create this whole Star Wars world around you, then obviously the emotion goes up, the entertainment goes up, and this is what we got.
People can only see 114 degrees of the visual field at a time. Behind the wheel, danger happens in 360, which means you can't catch it all. Nissan's safety shield can, because it sees in 360. To show you how it works, we stage a battle that pits you against the greatest threats in the Star Wars universe in a 360-degree simulation inspired by Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
Safety shield ready.
It throws danger from all sides in full 360, demonstrating that no matter how distracted you might be, this technology can see and alert you to dangers you might miss.
Left. Blind spot warning activated. Right. Blind spot warning activated.
Our goal was to make sure that you did look left and something was going on the right, and that's when our product was being proven.
About threats sneak up. You couldn't just film in the studio.
walking around, I cannot find anybody that's done a full 360 practical shoot with visual effects integrated for good reason, because it's an incredibly difficult process. People might shoot in several cameras or on a blue screen and then merge that with some synthetic background. But I think to get the action and the intimacy you needed, the things were right in your face, it required to be out there and shooting in that environment.
Reactions? We're starting. We show you how easily you can be distracted, and how Nissan Safety Shield has you covered.
Congratulations.
Simulation complete.
So Steve and I checked off quite a few things on our bucket list as a result of being able to work with ILM, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Super fun working with some of
It
the...
was actually kind of stressful.
Yeah, stressful and fun. But you haven't lived until you've been in the desert and seen a platoon of stormtroopers coming over the hill. Pretty amazing. So anyway, what do we mean? We talked about quality. And I think one of my favorite parts and one of the most interesting things that we did, but both your team and my team became students of the genre. We watched everything that was available. And we wanted to make sure that we delivered where we saw some shortcomings in previous efforts. So when we talk about VR quality, there's a lot to think about, right? Justification of multiple fields of view, management of multiple narratives, how do you keep a hero one with other interesting things going on? A sense of presence was so very important. We want to make sure you actually felt like you were there. And I can say without question that we achieved that. Live action proximity, movement, that was all very interesting things, and establishing a narrative rationale. Where were you? What was the camera POV and why? And again, this isn't anybody's fault. We just built on the shoulders of others that either we liked or tried to avoid things we didn't like. This is all new formats. These are all new filmmaking techniques. And it's all part of growing pains that we benefited from. So I can tell you our partners at Lucasfilm and Disney liked it so much that they made our actual co-branded experience the anchor tenant for the Star Wars celebration during this last summer for the 40th anniversary of the franchise. And it was an enormously popular event with 40 and 50-minute waits as people tried to get on the new Oculus headsets to experience it. So we talked about, paying our freight, making sure we're delivering on this. And certainly from a likability standpoint, you can imagine that all of this was very important. At first we thought, well, likability in a Star Wars type environment, of course people are going to like it. But actually Star Wars fans have a higher bar for liking something if you're going to mess around with their IP, right? So you better do it respectively. You better do it good. It's all about sweating the small stuff in terms of making sure that we're not taking care of our own brand, but our partner's brand. As part of this process, right? Also, this is really what we needed to get, right? 24-point increase in nameplate awareness and a 34-point safety tech awareness part. Again, blew it out of the water. You don't see these kinds of things in traditional media. And what was interesting to us, we asked this question, we didn't think we were going to score well on it, but it actually affected purchase consideration, at least in terms of what we got back from the survey information. And we'll show you how we applied that in the next project. But very interesting and something that we hadn't considered actually, if you will, benefiting from as part of this experience. Incredible amount of views. The Star Wars fan base actually loved it. So from a PR perspective, it was an incredible experience.
50 million views in the first 30 days.
Yeah, unbelievable. It's still, for 2017, it is in second place of all-time actual views with just having a month in market, right? And of course, we won another prestigious event from a jury literally of our peers. So we were very proud of that, as well as getting the business results we were seeking. So now, in the next presentation of our speed speech, we have See the Unseen. Now, this is what we just finished with. We're super excited about that. We'll set the table in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So we've been talking a lot about Nissan Intelligent Mobility. And what's interesting about this, it's about more confidence, excitement, and connectivity in the driving experience. So it goes beyond sort of safety-related stuff into more comfort and convenience, especially when we talk about technology like ProPilot, which keeps you centered, as well as modifying the distance you have with other cars in front of you with just keeping your fingertips on the steering wheel. Some really cool class-leading tech that we're very proud of. But this is a big story, and it's hard to communicate, right? This is a marketing challenge many of us have. At the same time, based on the consideration numbers, we wanted to find a way to push this not just to a dealer show experience, but all the way down to the dealership. We wanted to try to make the Star Wars experience more relevant for the dealers, as well as try to find out if what we were seeing in the previous data in terms of these types of experience could really help push people over the edge in terms of the purchase of the vehicle. So we made this available actually in dealerships as well as the auto shows. And so now that we set the table of sort of what we were trying to do and then where we wanted to do it, Steve will talk to you a little bit about what we were trying to get to. How did the creative idea come to fruition?
Well, what we've learned pretty quick was, there's a lot of technology in the Nissan cars, and largely they're sometimes misunderstood. People don't know what they are. They don't know what they do. And it really is our job to use digital to help demonstrate those features. And we quickly discovered it was a lot easier to demonstrate those features if people could see them. And that was really our way in, is taking some of these awesome technologies that happen to be invisible and give it a voice, a visual voice. And
the idea of actually sort of the creative conceit of saying there's really a starship
inside everyone.
Inside everyone, both literally, as you'll see, and figuratively.
And having Disney commit to actually designing these vehicles was a launching pad. So let's go to the next slide, because they're totally badass. So this is Pose. There's Kylo Ren's and the Walker.
So great. So technology is invisible. We're going to make it visible by seeing the unseen, and we're bringing the sort of hidden starship within each Nissan to life, if you will, enabled in order to demonstrate Nissan intelligent mobility.
One of the launching pads that we had before we get into the case study is the product was on the floor already. The Titans were there, the Maximas were there, the Ultimas were there.
Without the Starship part.
Without the Starship. They were there. Those Starships, obviously, there's only a few of them created. We use digital to kind of bring this stuff to life pretty much wherever there's a Titan, a Rogue, or a Maxima.
Like Starships, Nissan cars are packed with advanced technologies you can't see. Computers, sensors, scanners, even lasers and force fields. To show off this hidden tech, we invited people at dealerships and auto shows across the US into a life-size Nissan augmented reality experience, right out of Star Wars The Last Jedi, where every obstacle is so imposing, so threatening, and so realistic. Whether you're outside the car or even inside, it feels like it's actually there.
So see the Unseen is a unique experience because of the scale involved. Not only replacing a full-size vehicle with essentially a starship, but adding in life-size TIE fighters, ATSTs, characters walking around the scene, and coupling that with really incredible tracking. People have never seen anything like it before.
To create this sense of realism and presence, we anchored the technology in the real world.
So what we ended up doing was actually physically placing the device on the vehicle.
Nissan Rogue detected.
Being able to do this kind of physical touch-to-tap kind of showmanship. That's really what sells the whole illusion.
In a first for AR, you place the mobile device against an object.
Nissan Titan detected.
This identifies it, reads the surrounding environment, then precisely maps and reveals the hidden starship inside, enabling you to direct droids, explore your surroundings, look closer, get inside, and witness firsthand how Nissan technology has got your back, your sides, and your right. It was a sensation on the showroom floors of over 1,000 dealerships and auto events nationwide, and proved that learning about advanced technologies can not only be informative, it can also be a ton of fun.
So a lot of sweating the small stuff in that. A lot of, when you're on some of the leading edge of tech, some of the things don't always work out as you anticipated, and sometimes you get some fantastic surprises. So it was touch and go for a little while.
A lot of trial and error.
Trial and error when you're doing things that literally hasn't been done before. So very interesting and a lot of fun. We have plenty of stories afterward. If you want to grab us, we'll tell you a couple of them. But again, what are we doing this for? Well, we're trying to move brand metrics that are associated with classic sales funnels. So we really got a huge increase in a lot of the things that we were trying to do in terms of familiarity with Nissan Intelligent Mobility, and then especially things like the ProPilot Assist that I referred to earlier, the things that aren't just safety related, but more comfort and convenience that laddered up to Nissan Intelligent Driving, which again was part of Nissan Intelligent Mobility. So these are the things that we start to do. Now what's interesting about this, I think is, while yes, I think from our perspective we hit it out of the ballpark, but it also speaks, you're not going to get that kind of lift unless awareness of those things are very low. So that's the other side of this, right? We've got a lot of work to do in terms of bringing Nissan Intelligent Mobility to a broader audience in a way that's simpler and easier to understand from a consumer benefit perspective. So we have our work cut out for us. Having said that, we're super excited about it. And I don't know, should we tell them about what's going on next, Steve?
Well, I don't know if we have time, but we're always playing around. We're playing around. Obviously, I have a lot of passion for technology and the team in Calgary. We're always trying to discover new things and how to connect technology, to the campaign, the creative direction, also looking at, there's new stuff coming out all the time, so we're always playing around on how can we actually enable technology to work within our campaigns, and I'm pretty excited about what we're going to be doing this year, but nothing to show right now.
That's not very satisfying, Steve, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So at the end of the day, what we're here to do, it's not about technology in and of itself, right? It's about connecting people and feelings with the brand and to find ways to tell better product stories, right? That's what we're here to do. So like all good stories, we kind of come back to the beginning and try to see it in a new way, if you will. And I think brands succeed when they break through in culture. I think we've had a lot of interesting discussion about this. And I think we have an edit to this because it's not really about breaking through culture, right? It's more contextual. It's more about understanding what's going in and around in culture.
How can you connect to it?
How do you connect? How do you know? And how do you make what you're doing relevant to something that's already important to your consumers, right? So we recommend the following to the Harvard Business Review for that. And with that, we'll answer any questions that you guys might have. Thanks.